and we're back. We got episode 002 with Tiara Alicea. Wow, that's the first time I said it together. It sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, two first names.
Yeah, it kind of rolls too. Sometimes they will clash and interject with each other. Um, Man, so this is going to be an interesting one. Uh, Tiara, well, I'll let her explain it, but in essence, I found her on YouTube through her spiritual kind of nature of things. And let's start with my background, right? I come from the East Coast, Pittsburgh, where I'm at now. And let's see, I never really gave spirituality a thing. I mean, you always kind of hear about it now and then, kind of just played it off as a joke or, passing oh, you're into stones, right? Stone magic. As I'm wearing a, stone now. And let's see, I got to the East Coast, and it wasn't till one of my buddies who's, very analytically minded, more right side of the spectrum, kind of pointed out to me. He was like, I realized there might be something to this whole, astrological sign thing, because he pointed out that all of the birthdays that he had of people he knew would be in the certain windows. And I'm an Aries and he's an Aries. And he was like, if you take a look at, your calendar or if you keep people's birthdays, you start to realize that there's only certain sections where it happens. And maybe even, I started noticing this on my Instagram where you would see happy birthday, people repost the birthday stuff. Yeah. And it was always happening in these 2-week periods, and then it would kind of fell off. And then maybe a 4-week period, and then it would fall off. Mm-hmm. And, in my mind, engineering background, I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's a reason that kids are born more frequently in a certain time of year. That would be the perfect explanation.
Right.
I look it up, and it's uniformly distributed across the board of childbirths. Which in this world of nothing is consistent and completely uncertain, childbirths are a flat line across the entire year.
Yeah.
And so that blew my mind and sent me on this whole rabbit hole of just researching this kind of stuff. And part of this is acting as if it's real. First of all, what do we know is real? So I always kind of thought, let's act as if it is real and see what happens. And that led me to chakras, which, maybe we'll get into at some point, but they're essentially just energy systems within your body. And I was taught there's only 7. I stumbled across a YouTube video that says, learn about chakras 8 through 12, hosted by Tiara Alicea. And you started getting into some stuff. I think I understood 8, but then you started talking about the rest, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're super metaphysical. They're not even touching the other 7.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to relate to this. And then, when I started this podcast, I was like, I got to have this chick on. And so at that point, I would love to introduce you, hear about, your spiritual journey, how you got to this conversation, and where, how did you get into spirituality?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, by the way. So kind of a similar journey. I see the parallels in our life, which is very interesting because I'm a Libra, and Aries and Libra are opposite signs. So I'm sure you probably attract a lot of Libras in your life.
I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure. I think it's usually Geminis, Leos, Sagittarius, Aquarius.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, then, so what does it mean that we're opposite then?
So there's 12 astrological signs, right? So every sign has its polarity, I guess you can say, in a sense. Right. So Aries and Libra are opposite on the zodiacal wheel, if you look at them on the birth chart wheel that we all have. Taurus and Scorpio, Gemini, Sagittarius, all of them have their opposites.
Right. Okay. The
so
yin yang.
You kind of the yin and yang, you kind of share similarities with that other sign, but at the same time, they are opposing you in a way that's sometimes sort of challenging, but at the same time, like a mirror. Okay. It's a very interesting concept to kind of get more into and analyze. I have a lot of Aries in my life.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, let's start with you and how, if you were born into a spiritual family or if you had to go through this process, and how did you figure out, or how did you start seeing this world in this new, astrology is connected and it's all connected kind of ordeal.
Yeah. So similarly to you, that parallel, I grew up on the East Coast too.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, Delaware.
You might have muted yourself.
Born and raised. Oh, mute myself?
Oh, no. Are you there?
Are you losing me? Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
I think you're back now. Yeah,
okay, that was weird. Okay.
A little bit of bad radio. Stick with it, guys.
That was very weird.
We're back.
We're back. Cool. Sorry about that.
Oh.
So, similarly to you, again, there's a parallel there. I grew up on the East Coast as well. Delaware, born and raised, very small state. It's the first state. Some people think it doesn't exist, but it does. Single mom, kind of like small, close-knit family. I went to a Catholic school from like pre-K to like 8th grade. So there was some sense of like, I guess you could say connectedness to like a higher source or higher knowing. I was taught about that from a Catholic perspective.
Okay.
However, it's sort of, I wouldn't say it didn't resonate, but it just, I guess I didn't match it on a vibrational level the way I do spirituality, because I think of religion sometimes as like a closed box, whereas spirituality, you kind of get to dip into all of the different boxes and see what's outside of that box.
Okay.
So, I was always kind of a curious kid in that sense. And it's weird because I would kind of do things that are related to spirituality. Like I would almost make my own like fortune tellers, tarot cards when I was a kid. And do certain things that are considered to be like metaphysical or occult and not even know what I was doing. And I also used to just like, I guess you could say, kind of just ponder like what the workings of the universe consisted of, like where we came from, what our purpose here was at a super young age. Like it wasn't even explainable why I was thinking about that, like single digits. And I would just kind of lay in bed at night and do that, think about that, like whether or not this universe is what we were kind of conditioned as children to believe it to be. And then I also meditate before bed too, oddly enough, and not really know what I was doing. So once I graduated high school and even like I was in college and this all started to kind of awaken for me, I guess you could say the explosion of my spiritual journey, I guess you could say in a sense, because I was always kind of spiritual, but I would say when I became aware of it was in my early 20s. It came about with like a twin flame sort of relationship. So my partner and I, who are actually still together at the time, we were both kind of going through like a dark night of the soul, kind of very lost, curious, didn't really know where we were going in life, what the purpose of life even was anymore, because you kind of like grow up being told what to do and what to think. And then when you become an adult, you're like, what do I do now? Like, what I'm supposed to like work and then like just retire and then die one day? Like, I don't want to, that's not life. You know what I mean?
No,
it just,
I can relate.
Yeah, like it just was like so unfulfilling to me to think about. And it almost sent me into like I would say a kind of a depression, and I didn't really know at the time. And that's where that dark night of the soul came from. So we started dipping into YouTube too. Like we fell down a rabbit hole one day, and I remember the first guy I watched was Infinite Waters. I don't know if you are aware of him.
I haven't like watched too many like spiritual YouTube things.
Okay. So he has a lot of YouTubes. He used to post like every single day. I don't know if he does anymore, but he used to just talk about topics and post short videos, and he just really just like expanded my mind and blew my mind, because I'm like, that makes sense. Like what he's talking about makes so much sense, and it's like hitting deep and resonating in a way that I've never really even experienced before. And I've gone to this Catholic school all my life and went to church, and they preached all these things, and I'm like, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're just like told what to believe.
Being told what to believe. But I guess he presented it in a way that made you think, and it allowed you to kind of expand your own mind and your own awareness and look within yourself. And that just made a lot more sense to me. And then I started diving deeper into that, and that kind of led to watching astrology videos, and I would just watch them for hours and almost like study for hours, watch things about crystals, started collecting crystals, got books on crystals and astrology and Reiki and all these things, and it kind of just exponentially took off from there.
Yeah, you just fell down the rabbit hole, and it was,
Yeah.
you became Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think something that, this might be a good place to start that can probably relate to a lot of people, is that idea of like, okay, now that I'm out of college, or, you know, now that I'm out on my own, I'm supposed to now just work to retire. And then once I retire, then I'll just, like you said, you kind of phrase it as dying. And that was something that really kind of shook me, or like something I was contemplating a lot. And this was maybe before my friend brought up the whole astrological thing, is that idea of like, okay, I graduated from college as a computer engineer, now what? And it's like, all right, get a software engineering job. And I was not congruent with that job whatsoever. And it was like, you know, why am I slaving away, let's say, for what's going to be 40 years of my life just to live out the where I'm the weakest, the 60 years where I'm the weakest, least motivated, and just supposed to be in that stable rut. And that kind of was also probably a part of my, like, okay, what is real? Like, let's break this apart. Like, what are we being taught that this is the way it needs to be? And I truly believe there's like good there for everybody. Like, if you love what you're doing, keep doing it, you know. But yeah, that was kind of where I started to splinter away from the matrix.
Yeah, you had to like, yeah, I was just going to say that, like, break down the matrix. And even once you're becoming aware of the matrix, you're just like, wow, we are all kind of just big kids that were conditioned to have, or I would say programmed to have certain thoughts and beliefs. Right. And then, like, here we are.
You just kind of pass
like,
it down.
What now?
And
oh my God, so much of it is passed down.
Well, so, you know, to get back, you know, I'm now in my parents' basement recording this, and you know, I went to college in Florida. I went to San Diego for 4 years, so I left my parents for, geez, what would that be? At least eight or 9 years, you know, and figured out all this, you know, shit that's in my life, these traumas that I've experienced, or why am I doing what I do? And I come back home, and I'm like, holy shit, like, Dad, I do that. Like, let me help you fix that. Or, Mom, I like hold on to these things too. Let me help you, tell you like what I did to fix this. Yeah. And it's like such a just, you know, and part of it is like them, like, you know, they had their own problems, and they're like, well, when I have kids, I'm not going to do this. And it's so like, you know, it's just one of those processes that I think then comes down to us to be like, well, what is real? You know, what is the truth of all of this? What do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? Like, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. There's an idea I've been kind of floating around with people that I truly, you know, you're told as a kid, at least I was, and I know a lot of people around me were, that there's things in life you just have to do even if you don't want to do them. I've been dissecting that for this last year now, maybe smaller than that, maybe 33 months, where I don't think I believe that anymore. Like, I truly don't believe that you have to do things in life you don't want to do. I believe almost everything should just kind of flow. Like, if you're able to set your intention on what you want, if certain things are happening, you know, you shouldn't, if you're doing something you don't want to do, then you're probably not doing what's best for you.
Yeah, you're not on your highest timeline is kind of what I think.
Highest timeline?
Yeah, that's kind of how I frame it. Because I struggled with that too. I was definitely raised in a family that, you know, hey, Tiara, you just got to do what you got to do. Even if you don't want to do it, or even if you don't enjoy it, you got to stick it out, you know? And I had to build that sort of resilience. And I also had the belief that I had to kind of reprogram within myself that you had to work your ass off. Excuse my French. I don't know if you're allowed to cuss.
Go for it. Shit, fuck, piss. This is uncensored. But yeah. Just give it whatever.
Yeah, okay,
give
cool.
Your true self.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, you know, that you had to work your ass off for everything. And every single time, I'd burn myself out. Yeah. Like, and it was with a short period of time, you know? And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? This is like torture. Like, you know?
Oh, for sure.
And I am of the belief that if you are on your highest optimal timeline, you are only going to align with things that you do enjoy on your path, that are in alignment with what you're supposed to do and with this divine purpose that I believe that we all come here with.
Sure.
And if for some reason something isn't resonating with you, or you don't find it to be fulfilling, or it's taking away from your life in multiple areas, you know, mental health, physical health, whatever it may be, it's not for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's going to it'll physically like weigh you down. You'll be like less.
Yeah, it'll physically manifest.
Yeah, you'll be more matter and less energy, which, you know, I think it's.
Oh, yeah.
But something you keep saying is like your highest timeline. And now here's where we might start losing people. But I've never heard this phrase.
We're gonna get
we're
weird.
gonna get weird. You know, what are we, 15 minutes in? But we're not sugarcoating this. Are you able to explain that? Like, what are you kind of? Because it's almost like I think I know what you're trying to say, but I can't really. Are you able to like dissect that a little to explain what you mean by?
Sure.
Like, what would be my highest timeline? What would be my lowest timeline?
Okay, so, you know, this is actually something I'm still learning, to be completely transparent. But the way I've been understanding it, I would actually suggest people watch Loki. I don't know if you've watched it yet.
Oh,
the
love
series.
it. Love it.
Beautiful illustration of what this kind of concept is. I was like, this is... sometimes they like baby spoon feed us information.
Right.
I feel like beautiful.
Doctor Strange. Have you seen Doctor Strange?
Love Doctor Strange. That's another one.
My favorite.
Yeah, like watch those, because those are gonna give you a good idea of, you know, this whole construct of time that we believe to be what it is. It's not that.
Yeah. Right.
You know, like everything is happening already. Everything that ever will happen, did happen, is happening. That's time, you know. Infinite.
All right, now I know what you're saying, but if this was me a couple months ago, I would need a second there.
You'd be like,
yeah,
yeah. You're like, wait a minute, let me digest.
Let's rewind that a second.
Yeah, people are gonna be like, oh, back 30 seconds. What did she?
You might want to slow down if you're watching this at 2 speed. You're gonna want to.
Yeah, back that thing.
Go down to 1, maybe 0.75.
Exactly. But no, like, so that's time. We think of this construct of time as past, present, and future, but we can really tap into any period in time because it only really exists up here, like in our mind.
Right.
We can tap into the past through memories. We can tap into the future through visualization and manifesting things.
Right.
You know, everything is connected through this present moment. So when I say highest optimal timeline, what I mean is, if in this present moment, you are constantly following your signs, synchronicities, spiritual omens, inspired action, everything that just feels right and in the most alignment to your highest frequency and your highest expression at that moment. And what I mean by that is like, whatever makes you feel good, you know? Then you're on your highest optimal timeline. All it really needs is intention and belief to back it up.
That's super fascinating. And it's reminding me of, I heard in one of your videos that you've read Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hear I need to read the Break the Habit of Being, but on that note,
that's a good one too.
Yeah, I'll add it to the list. On that note, he talks about so much about intention and comparing it with like an elevated emotion, you know, which is love, gratitude, appreciation, and how it'll just, you know, essentially it happens and you don't have to really almost do anything. Like, it's that conversation of you need to do. It's like, well, you know, don't force yourself to do something you don't want to do. And this might sound a little weird, but I've been noticing it with like the idea of even just going to the bathroom. Like, you know, there's times where I'm like, oh, I'll hold it and wait till I get home. Or I don't want to go back into that restaurant that I just left. I'll wait till I go home. It's like, dude, you're uncomfortable. So just do it now.
Yes.
You're going to make the next 30 minutes. You're going to think about it for the next 30 minutes. Just, you know, and it's an interesting way to point it out. But I mean, you can extrapolate that across so many things. That's what happened with my job, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, don't get us wrong here, anybody listening. Like, there are things that you have to do that's uncomfortable, such as reprogramming your subconscious mind, that can be an uncomfortable thing, but that has a different intention behind it. So I think it's really actually an awesome thing that you brought that up, because the intention behind the action is really what's the important thing. Because if it's out of pure intention, and if it's out of something that, you know, you consider to be of your highest vibration, or the better qualities of yourself, whatever you want to call it, then that's how you know you need to follow it. But if you're coming from a unhealthy aspect of your ego from it, for example, if you're coming from a dark place, angry, spiteful, depressed, you know, those lower vibration emotions like that you brought up, then that's how you know that intention is not really backed up by purity, by something higher vibration.
Right. And on that note, I remember seeing in the in Becoming Supernatural, they have like a graph of like the vibrational frequencies of like love versus fear and anger and all this stuff. And you know, it really played, and so to lay it out, like the lowest vibrations like fear and anger at the bottom, and like love and being connected and one is like at the top. And and it like whenever I saw that graph, to me, I couldn't stop looking at it. I mean, it's just a bunch of lines it's just a bunch of squiggly lines, but I couldn't stop looking at it, because to me it described why love and, you know, freedom will always win and triumph over evil. And I mean, it's, in my opinion, it's just that being in that higher frequency, like it just will. It's almost like one of those, like, it just will be like love and appreciation, no matter what situation you take it into. 10 times out of 10, like, you're taught to believe there's no guarantees in life, but I guarantee you that if you approach every situation with that, it's like, you know, you're always going to be on the outcome of, like, good will always triumph, which is such a, you know, I don't really like living in a world of absolutes, but that's something that I, you know, maybe short term, you kind of have short term hell, whether it's like the 20th century but like something good always kind of comes out of whatever's occurring.
Yeah, it's like the shadow work.
Yeah. And maybe that's something we should kind of get back into, that I love that you described, where it was, you know, trying to like, you know, you can't like manifest almost, which I think we should have a conversation about overall, but you can't create or have a pure intention if you almost don't have your own, you know, shit or trauma kind of figured out, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my God. That was probably the biggest lesson I had to learn, was in order for, you know, the things you do desire to come to you, you got to clear out all the blockages. You got to clear out all the little obstacles and brick walls that you've built for yourself over the expansion of 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you know, however your age is. And the older you get, obviously, it can be a bit more difficult, because
the neural pathways.
Although our minds are, our minds are neuroplastic, right? So we can essentially unprogram and reprogram things all the time. But, you know, the older we get, the more automatic habits and things have developed, and they're harder to kind of break down.
Right.
And understand, and also gain the awareness of after a while too.
And I kind of use the metaphor. So there's two things here. One thing is I want to talk about like something I was doing physically that was to clear a blockage, but the metaphor I used to do what you were describing was that, like, I view it as like we all kind of are on our own highway in life, and you know, if you go to work, there's one way. You know, you're always going the same way, and you know, if something cuts you off, if there's someone who cuts you off literally, or if there's a block in the road, like we lose our minds. Like, you become so just like disgruntled, like, I can't believe I have to do something else. And it's like,
so much resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
There.
And it's like you become so disgruntled, it almost like shakes you to who you are, that you're not able to go on the same road. And I think there's, you know, an analogy there of some sort with how the road is kind of a symbol of, you know, doing the same thing over and over again, yet almost expecting a different outcome, such as manifestation, trying to manifest something that's not on that road, but you're never gonna be okay diverging to a different road.
Absolutely. Like, you know, I sort of connected it a while back, because I do study astrology, we have our big three, right? Like our sun sign, our moon sign, and then our rising. So I'll kind of tie astrology into this really quick.
Sure.
And I had a guru actually that was teaching me a lot about the Vedic astrology and the sidereal system. And we were talking a lot about fate versus free will. And that was always a debate in my head that was like,
that's going to be a tricky
what?
one. Yeah.
That's a tricky one, yeah. But if you think about it, you know, whatever's fated for us, whatever's destined for us, is really just a, I guess, product of our behaviors, our ascendant sign, like how we behave, our feelings and emotions, our mind, which is our moon sign, how we feel. Like if we feel like doing something, then bam, we take that action or behavior behind it. If I feel like eating at that moment, I'm gonna go eat, you know? And then our sun sign is like how we identify with ourselves. So if all of those elements created a person, it almost predetermines how you're going to go about your days. And if it's such an automatic thing, we're all humans, so we're just all made up of habits, essentially. If those habits are not malleable or adaptable, everything in your life is predetermined already. So if you are on that same path, that same road that you're driving down, and you're not willing to take a different route because you do see that blockage in the way, it's not going to happen.
And that's, and this is so bizarre. I'll put it out there. This is such a crazy thing. I was at a point in my life where, you know, I would create, and this is how it's kind of like all tied together almost. I did create like a list of things that well, first I wanted a girlfriend, right? I was like, I want a girlfriend. I'm ready for that in my life, blah, blah, blah. So the next thing is like a girl did appear in my life who everything kind of aligned. But then once it came down to like figuring it out, it just didn't work out. There was a blockage, right? I couldn't figure it out. So then I took a step back and I was like, okay, well, what do I want in a girlfriend? It's like, all right, so I'm going to just like list all these things out. And, you know, as I started like kind of, you know, going on dates with girls, I was like, you know, mentally like thinking if they check the boxes. Well, there was like 10 things. And if they would check like 2 or 3 of them, I would get like this anxious, attachment style. And I would just get anxious with inside me.
Yeah.
And it was like this, like, you know, very like, it ruined the relationships. Like they wouldn't work out because I would get those like anxiety or like fear. And what I tracked it back to was the idea of letting go. And so what happened is on this process of me moving out from San Diego, I physically, in the physical world, I went through all of my stuff that I had in my bedroom, in my house, and literally donated or sold 95% of it. Literally let go of the physical stuff. Yeah, it was.
That's really powerful.
So here's the crazy part to me is as I was going through that stuff, the more emotional connection I had with it, you know, whether it was like a jersey or like something I did when I was younger, if I thought about like getting rid of it or letting go, it invoked that same feeling that I had within the girls that I was like trying to see. And I was like, holy shit, like this is powerful stuff. And so, and flash forward after like clearing out probably 75% of my shit, a girl did come into my life, checked every single box. I didn't feel anxious with her. I mean, we're dating now. And like, I don't feel that anxiety anymore. Everything's just free. I'm just okay to let go of things. Like, I mean, you're more secure. Yeah, 100%. I'm 100% in that secure attachment style now where it's like, holy shit, all I had to do was literally just get rid of all the stuff that I was emotionally attached to. But to me, that broke my mind, that connection.
Yeah, and a lot of that is manifested or created in childhood. Like if you analyze sort of the relationship that you had with your caregivers or your parents or whoever, it's almost like a mirror. It's very, very similar. So for myself, I'll go ahead and share mine too.
Please.
I'm avoidant. Very avoidant attachment style. And the opposites tend to like always be together.
There's a good book called Attachment Styles that goes into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that book. So I feel like once you figure out your attachment styles too, it's so much easier to navigate your relationships. Like I highly suggest everybody look into it. But so I'm avoidant because, you know, I obviously grew up with a father who was not present. So that kind of manifested there too. But also I had other caregivers or people in my life that were sort of, emotionally
Sure.
detached. So that there was never like a safe space for me to emote or share my feelings or have my feelings even validated,
Right.
So I had to keep a
Oh,
lot
for
to
sure.
myself. So in relationships, that sort of unconsciously manifested for a very long time
Mm-hmm.
as I would get into conflict with somebody, or I mean, first off, I wouldn't even want to get to the conflict part. But if I did get into a disagreement or conflict with somebody and it got to a certain point,
Yeah.
I'd dip out. Whether that was physically removing myself from it and then never revisiting that conflict again, or, if it was so bad to the point where I'm like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need you in
Right.
my life. And that can be really damaging, not only for my relationships, but I mean, continues to damage the type of relationship I do desire. Like, I'm never going to get there if I keep
For sure.
acting that way and that repeated automatic behavior. So I had to catch myself and, you know, become more secure too and be like, okay, how can I respond to this knowing that I need to validate my own emotions, my own feelings first? I can't just expect that from
Right.
someone else and then approach it from that
Yeah,
perspective.
because I mean, and yeah, and that happens, I think, with all of relationships that you have, especially the closer someone gets, the more they probably amplify within you. And and I think
Yeah.
even as like a meta idea, I've noticed in my life, if there's something you don't like about your life that keeps coming up, keeps happening, whether it's like in these relationships where you feel yourself like, all right, time to avoid, time to detach, time to detach, time to detach. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the idea that your inner world or your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, where if you're doing
Mm-hmm.
something, if like the universe almost keeps throwing at you the issues that you need to work out within yourself, and you're gonna
Always.
keep like you're gonna have to keep experiencing those issues until you go into yourself and you're like, okay, I'm ready to heal these. And this kind of ties back into how you were talking about where maybe you don't, and so that's even tricky. Like maybe you don't want to do it, but I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a level that, like, whenever I went through this stuff, I knew that it wasn't going to be enjoyable, but I knew the other side was going to be better. Just somehow, some way, I knew,
Yeah.
okay, this isn't going to be a fun experience, but I know that if I do it, if I go through this process, if I like pay attention to these issues, if I heal them within myself, if I reorientate myself, I knew the other side was going to be better.
Yeah. And that's where that pure intention comes in, even though you had to do the uncomfortable
Right.
thing, because when we're programmed to do something for so long, and as human beings, we like
Right.
predictability. We like knowing what's going to happen. We find comfort in that. But the problem is that predictable, comforting circumstance is sometimes so unhealthy and it's not aligned with
Right.
our highest optimal timeline
Right.
once again. So, we have to catch ourselves in that moment. And I think that's where awareness really comes in. And I like what you said about, like, for a second there, you were saying, like, if we don't want to do that, there's a lot of people that become aware that they have a certain behavior and they don't
Right.
care to change it because they know it's uncomfortable. They know it's going to take effort. But if you have a pure enough intention backed behind it, if you have a belief that on the other side, there's light there, there's going to be opportunities there for you, there's going to be so many road openings that are, and things that are like
The
completely
Yeah.
open for you, not blocked. That road that you're driving down is now free. Like, there's no construction going on or anything. Like, just like you can
Yeah.
speed right through and get to your manifestation a lot
Right. You're just at
faster.
peace with the universe almost. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with
And
yourself.
what you're touching on there was about people who become aware of it but then don't like almost heal from it. Like there's one
Mm-hmm.
girl who good friends with out in well, I won't say where just to keep a little bit of animosity. But
Yeah.
she kind of even was like, like we have these types of conversations, and she would even bring up like that she's aware of the patterns that she needs to fix, and she wants to fix them,
Mm-hmm.
but like she's kind of caught in that middle ground of like, well, I kind of wish I didn't like go on this. I kind of wish I was still blind to the fact, and I kind of wish that I just was never aware of this so that
Oh,
I didn't have to deal with it almost. And I I I think it was just
I
like a thought, but
understand that. Yeah.
are you able to relate to that?
Personally, I would say for myself, no, because once I become aware of something, like I'm actively already doing, like I need to change it because I have like I'm very, I wouldn't say relentless, but I'm like a go-getter. So if I have a goal in mind or I have an end game that I'm trying to get to, like I'm doing whatever it takes, you know, whether that's inner work, outer work, whatever. But I do know other people that have said similar things to that, and I completely understand. I think that that's sometimes part of the healing process. Is almost sometimes like if you did go through a traumatic experience, it's like I wish that didn't happen so I wasn't like this now, or I wish I didn't even become aware that this is how it was affecting my life because you know, now I feel responsible for changing it, or now I feel like it's my fault. Like I've heard so many things. I think it's just part of the acceptance part of it. You know, I feel like there might be like a step process. If I could put, oh, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, I could do that. But everybody's process is so different. You know, everybody comes to terms with that so differently. Like I can come to the acceptance point first and then do the work. Or some people become aware of it first and then they accept it. There's really no right or wrong to anything. It's whatever is right for you in your journey. But accepting it is a huge part of healing.
I think that's a great point. You know, I mean, obviously there's the being aware of it, accepting. I always thought of it like, you know, it's not your fault that you have the traumas in your life. It's not your fault that you're getting what your parents have.
No, not at all.
And then it becomes your responsibility to kind of heal them and your responsibility to fix them. Now, you know, the question becomes, I guess in my mind, it's like, you know, there's an element of the speed, right? Because of being an Aries, and it sounds like you have a lot of the similar traits where once I'm aware of it, it's just like, all right, I got to figure it out.
Yeah, I have Mars on my ascendant, so if anybody knows astrology watching, I have a lot of, well, Aries is ruled by Mars, so I kind of have a lot of that fiery
so it's
energy
like in
too.
your sign a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
But so then my point being is that it like, you know, and maybe it's just like you're saying, maybe it's hard for me to relate to it because or either of us to relate to it because of that fire where it's just like, I see it, let's do it, let's just get it over with. I know it's gonna be better on the other side, da 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 da. And then maybe you got a good point where it's like some people are, you know, they need like a slower, gentler process. They need to think through it a little bit more. It needs to be a little bit more of like like, you know, and I don't think she wasn't like, you know, I wish I never, it was more of just like a, you know, I've thought about if it would be better kind of thing. And so to your point, maybe, you know, and I haven't talked to her in a little bit, but maybe it's like, you know, she's kind of like figuring that out, weaving through it kind of thing.
Yeah. She might have made progress with that, you know, because I kind of want to bring it back to the dark night of the soul thing. Have you feel like you experienced that yet, or like on your journey so far?
I guess I'm not really sure what exactly you would mean by it. Let's explain the dark night of the soul, so maybe we're on the same page there.
Yeah. So I myself have gone through, I feel like, multiple of them. I know some people that just go through one major one along their spiritual journey or spiritual awakening. I feel like the dark night of the soul, everybody might have their own little context of it. But to me, what it means is like, you know, you start becoming aware of all these things, of all of the programming, the beliefs, the conditioning, the generational trauma that you need to heal, like all of these, you know, psychology, all this stuff you start learning and becoming aware of. And then you have this period of time or these moments where it kind of completely destroys you, you know, mentally, physically, whatever. And then, you know, some people become really anxious, depressed. Some people have panic attacks. Some people don't eat. Some people are just not productive in their day-to-day life. They do the bare minimum just to like get through. That could be depression too. But, you know, it's just like a period of time where I consider it part of the healing process. I consider it part of the integration of what you're experiencing. And part of the acceptance process too, because it really is a hard thing to accept when you're like, man, I just want to live this like happy and joyful and fulfilling life. And now I feel like I have all these blockages in my way, or now I feel like all this happened to me and I can't get there, or whatever the thoughts are in your head. But that dark night of the soul is so mental. It's all in your head. There's all those blocks only exist up in the mind. So it's a hard thing to get through.
That's interesting. So I'm actually interviewing, well, I don't want to say who or when, I do have friends, let's say, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
aware of what you're talking about, where you get into a dark place and then it almost seems like there's no way out. I'll be honest, I am very fortunate that
Yeah.
I never kind of got to that place. What actually happened?
Mm-hmm. And some people don't. Some
Yeah,
people coast
well,
through.
so I'll let you know what happened with my little journey. Probably started a year ago. It was like December, would have been the end of November. So I was telling you about how there's that first girl. So first of all, my life fortunate by all stretch of the imagination. Two parents, they love each other.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of always never really was afraid of anything. I had a very secure growing up. Life,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. I went to college. It was a very on the outside perspective from the outer world. It's like you're a white male, you went to college, you had a good paying job, everything was perfect for you, right? You have nothing to complain about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so back to the whole girlfriend situation I went through, where I kept seeing those repeated patterns. What was it after that one girl where it was like everything was like bliss? Like now I know that everything was bliss in that relationship, and the fact that I have my traumas, I put my it works the way it does,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole thing essentially fizzled
Mm-hmm.
out. And it was probably a week or two after that I met this girl. And for reasons I'm going to keep it ambiguous, she met this girl and she works with plant medicine, and the idea being is that
Mm.
you meet with her, you tell her like what's going on in your life, and I remember I was even like, look, like I have nothing to complain about. I was like, nothing in my life is really bad. Like, yeah, exactly.
Everybody
That's
thinks
literally what I
that.
said. I was like, but like, I was like, I am
Yup.
interested to hear what you say. So let's meet. We got coffee. I kind of talked to her about the whole like girlfriend situation. I was like, yeah, everything was great, and then it wasn't. I didn't understand why. Blah blah blah. She's like, okay, well, meet. Here's your what are they called, like mantra, and we kind of played around with it and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
meditate on this for every day, up until which wasn't hard for me. I meditate before and after bed, or before bed when I wake up. And so you meditate on it and
Yeah.
it brings up all these emotions, and we have our ceremony, and at the end of it led to, I'm going to keep it a little bit ambiguous again to keep some privacy, but I had
Mm-hmm.
some, let's say, sexual trauma
Yeah.
from my past where, it wasn't like the first time I gave up my virginity or anything, but there was just fondling of nature that I grew up thinking like, okay, I know that was wrong. I know that was something that, I should
Mm-hmm.
move past, or that was something that like was wrong and I shouldn't do. But it kind of doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You don't get to just say like, I know that was wrong and move on from it. And so in that ceremony, it
Mm-hmm.
like, it brought everything forward that, needed to be shown some light on. And I was like, it led to some childhood, what is it, childhood trauma therapy, or like where you talk to yourself as a child.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
That's actually
it's
really
helped me a
powerful.
lot. And so that was the first time I ever did it. So yeah, so I had put all my laundry out there. So yeah, that happened, and I needed to heal that. Which I obviously healing's a
Mm-hmm.
weird thing where I think it's like a process. You kind of you figure it out. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
that night I was rattled to my core. Like you just I was crying. Like it was just like emotional. Just like that was the first time where
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Release.
Like, what is reality? Like,
Yeah.
what did I just experience?
Yep. Yeah, so Dark
Yeah.
Night of the Soul is literally that and just
I
extended.
mean, gosh, like that's fucking crazy because to me, I'm lucky it was only one night.
Hmm.
But I can only imagine
Yeah.
prolonging that. And so, luckily that was my, darkest night of the soul. And then, of course, we've done a couple more sessions, and then,
Hmm.
I think I'm at a point now where I'm able to kind of, I don't want to say figure it out on my own, but I'm able to identify some healing, and there was unworthiness. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
navigate
And so
it.
there's some unworthiness. There was some intuition blockages that I've healed. There was letting go, which was a big aspect that we kind of talked about earlier. And so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally can understand that hitting bottom. I mean, I think I'm just truly, I'm in a great spot. I'm very fortunate that I didn't have to endure it much more than 24 to 48 hours after the fact.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's absolutely lovely. Like, and a lot of people do that simply just during their shadow work sessions. I consider
Okay.
that to be like a shadow work session. And that happens where that release comes out, and then it's like that roadblock that was there before is already like 85% of the way
Right.
cleared out. You know what I mean? And there's like very, very little you need to get through the rest of. But then there's other people who have like extended periods of time of it. I know, like, I myself had
Okay.
a few of them. Especially when you're a really transformational person, like you're always kind of ever evolving, it's like an identity crisis
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like you don't even know who you are anymore sometimes. Or even what you want anymore if you're on the right path. Like I've had so many of those moments, and actually just recently, I want to say like synchronicities and signs from the universe, do not pass them up. They are
Yeah.
not coincidences. Like they come through so strong sometimes that you're like, I cannot
Right.
even deny this one. Like this is insane, you know? And that happened to me recently, and I was reading a book that I have some books
See a
behind me.
couple.
I don't know if you can see it, but one of them, they're held up by like a book stopper. One of them fell over, like while I was in here. I'm like,
All
all
right,
right,
I'll look.
what's going on?
I guess I'll bite.
Yeah, I guess I'll read that
Yeah.
one, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was, I was kind of going through my own stuff at the time, and I didn't
Sure.
jump on that initially. And I was on my plane ride back from California, and I was reading the
So
book,
real quick, was this a couple
like,
weeks
within
ago
the
then?
first-
Or the last
yeah.
week?
yeah, so I got back from California this past week, actually,
Okay, so
on
we're talking super recent.
Tuesday. So I was
Oh, okay.
very recent, yeah. But the book fell over like
Okay.
probably 8 months ago, so I did not read it right away. I did not listen to my team of flight, my spirit team right away. Hopefully they forgive me for that one.
It's a learning experience, right?
But they're allowed. Yeah, exactly. They are loud sometimes, and I had to learn that. Like, listen, you need to start listening to them more. And I've had multiple intuitives and multiple friends that also have like really strong intuition tell me like, your spirit team, your guides are trying
Yeah.
to talk to you.
Yeah,
Like you're
that's
not
it.
listening, you know? I have a few intuition blocks that reading this book, I'm really now realizing that they are probably like, it's kind of insane for me to say it, but from like a past life.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm going to keep mine ambiguous too, just because
Whatever you're
I'm kind
comfortable
of a
with.
private person
Yeah.
in some aspects, and then others
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll air it out, whatever. But I was reading the first part of this book, and there was something so significant in it that I literally like, I just started crying. And I was like, wow. It was not a coincidence that this book kind of just fell over. Because sometimes I'm like, I'll use this like discernment a little too much, and I'm like, oh, okay, it just fell over.
Right.
Like I'm just overthinking it. But no, it's like something greater than yourself is really trying to send these messages
and-
to you. And every time you've had a small inkling of doubt, like it almost just dissipated at that moment, because I'm like, wow, all this doubt I have is really blocking me from so much. Like, why am I doing that to myself?
Because I can understand what you're saying, and I totally like can relate. Cannot specifically relate, but if I was someone listening who kind of thought this was woo woo, are you able to kind of go into the like? And I want to respect your privacy and everything about what you want to talk about, but are you able to like either think of another situation that's similar or go into a little bit more detail, as opposed to just
Oh yeah, I'll share the detail. I don't think I've ever shared it before on any platform, but here we go. Let's do it. So, this happened in 2019. Actually, no, I'll start actually at childhood. So when I was a kid, I used to have this reoccurring dream that there was like, actually, I think I might have talked about this on Clubhouse. I can't remember. I had this recurring dream that I was a young girl. I'm not sure if, like, of my identity. I just know that I was a young female. And there was this, like, house that lived behind mine. And it seemed like there was some sort of woman that lived there that I was very afraid of. And all I can say was the energy kind of felt like witch. Like, that's just what it felt like to me. It was a reoccurring dream. I was, like, so scared of it when I was a kid. Don't, like, have any explanation for it. I never really shared it with my mom or anybody because, like, in my culture, like, that's what's called brujeria, like, witchcraft, or, like, just maybe they need to take me to church and, like, douse me in holy water or something, you know what I mean? So I never really shared it with anybody because I didn't really feel like anybody would have understood it. And it was just kind of something I kept to myself. So fast forward, I didn't really have the dream after, I would say I was double digits. Didn't really have the dream anymore. And I went to Sedona in 2019. And I went to a psychic. She was amazing. She was tapped in. And I went there with my partner. So my boyfriend got read first. She did a mix of intuitive, clairvoyant sort of reading, and she used, instead of tarot cards, she used playing cards, which I actually loved. And it was like, she was super tapped in. So she read him first, but she kept like looking over at me. And she's like, I'm sorry, like, your energy is just really strong right now. And I was in there like shaking almost. And I don't know why. My body was just sort of uncontrollably shaking. I didn't have any explanation for it. It was just kind of like a heightened energy feeling. And it felt very weird, but I don't know. I was like, maybe it's just because I'm around her and I'm nervous, but
you couldn't really explain it.
I don't know what I would be nervous for. Like, I've seen psychics before, so whatever. So she's reading for me, and she's telling me all this crazy stuff, like stuff I used to do when I was a kid. The fact that I had a huge spirit team with me, like a team of light that has been with me since I was a child. Like, there's multiple of them. I'm very connected to them, and I've done spiritual or quote unquote psychic work in past lives. And I'm like, I'm using my discernment here. I'm taking it with a grain of salt. This was still in the beginning. Well, I wouldn't say the beginning of my spiritual journey because I was like already spiritual at that point, but I wasn't super subscribed to the idea that I had
like
this
dipping
huge
your toe in the
spirit
water.
team or guides
like dipping your toe in the water,
me.
but you hadn't jumped in.
I was dipping my toe in that water at that time. Yeah. So when she was telling me this, I'm like, okay, she's like, do you have any questions? And I'm like, actually, yeah, I do. Because, I have these weird dreams. I told her about a few. And then I told her about the one I had as a kid, like this reoccurring dream. And I don't know how the term Salem came up, like the Salem witch trials. Can't really remember. But I was always kind of terrified of that time. Like, I don't even like talking about that sort of time, And she's like, yeah, like, you had a past life there. Like, you need to go to Salem and heal that. And I'm like...
You're like, what?
I don't know about that, lady. Like, I'm not going there. You know what I mean? But she's like, you see that? Like, there's something there. You don't want to go. Like, why else would you be that scared of going? So I'm like, okay, maybe she has a point, but, like, I'm going to shake it off. And she's like, well, you need to go there one day. I still haven't gone. Sorry, Jennifer. She's probably gonna like.
Well, I don't think.
God.
So sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say it's up to you to go.
No, yeah, you're fine. So.
Yeah.
It is. I think I will, only because I'm gonna continue with the story. So, I also got my aura photo taken that day, and I went first, got my aura photo taken, and my photo is being developed by, I think she goes by Auras by Jamie. She's in the Center of the New Age in Sedona. Go see her if you ever want your aura photo taken, if you want, like, it's interpreted. She's amazing. And she looks at me and she goes, your photo looks like all of the other psychics that work for me. And I was like, nah, And she's like, yeah, they're right here. I'll show them to you. And we all have this sort of, like, arc of light over us. And my boyfriend got his taken too. And not to say that he's not intuitive or anything, but he didn't have that same sort of aura. And I was just kind of like, whoa. And she's telling me like very similar things to what my psychic told me the day prior. So I'm just like, I leave that trip with this like whole
You're
new
like shaken.
understanding and world of, I was a bit shaken up. Like, what is going on? I was just kind of unsure, like, of what even what was happening. And so To be honest, like, I took it, but at the same time, I was like, maybe I'm overthinking this. Like,
Right.
maybe I'm taking what they said too literally. Like, you
Right.
have that doubt come in. So, fast forward to, obviously, 2021. Now we're here. Like, 8 months ago or so, the book, it's called The Alchemist. Like, knocked off on my little bookshelf here. Again, I have a book stopper there, so I don't know why it would even fall over. There's no other explanation.
Your
for
spirit
it,
team
honestly.
was just shoving the wall. They're just pounding on it.
They were nudging me. I get yeah, and I also get angel numbers like all the time, It's repeating numbers in threes. So it falls over, and I kind of take it, and I'm like, all right, somebody wants me to read that book. You know what I mean? And of course, I've been trying to develop my relationship with this team of light for a long time. I actually asked for a sign of like their name because my psychic told me to like get to know them, get to know who you're speaking to. I only ever received the name Theo, and Theo is, from my understanding, it's like
how did you receive Theo?
Yeah.
What was the process of like?
So I do a lot of my channelings right now. The only times I've ever been successful are in the states where you're either falling asleep or waking up. So the hypnagogic state or the hypnopompic state. Those are the two states that I find for myself really, really easy. And for other people, you can definitely do it. Trust me.
And to
you're super tapped in.
Before you continue, I wanted to point out that in Becoming Supernatural, he talks about how important those two moments are, and he goes into I'm not even going to try, but there's the whole science of like, you can break it down at a scientific level as to what chemicals your body's producing, why this chemical turns into this chemical, and how it gets you into that. Yeah, he does the entire... And so I just wanted to give scientific credence to what you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely what you said. Like, I know that in that state, I'm either in theta, I think it's theta, or maybe moving from theta to alpha into beta again to the conscious mind. So simply all I do is I set an intention either before I go to sleep or as I'm waking up and I'm not like my body's not necessarily awake yet. I'm kind of setting intentions in my head. You know what I mean? Like speaking in my head and asking for something. And I've like done channelings for other people that I'll kind of give them like a metaphoric message, and they're like, well, I actually took that very literally because it's actually happening in my life, you know? And I'm like, whoa, like, and I actually saw it in my mind, like a clairvoyance, you know what I mean? So I guess that's like a muscle I'm sort of practicing right now and kind of trying to clear out any intuitive blockages. But so I asked for it before I went to sleep. I was like, who am I speaking to? Like, do you guys have a name? I'm being told to like get to know you guys more. I want to develop a stronger connection with you. I feel like we should start with that. I think I wrote it down and I put it underneath my pillow and then I went to sleep. Woke up and I didn't receive anything in those states or in my dreams or anything. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe I'm not ready yet. Maybe they just don't want to share their identity with me yet. That's totally fine. Like, this is a work in progress. Well, I'm driving on the road to leave my house. I forget where I was going. I'm at the light that I'm always at. And in front of me, a license plate just says Theo. Theo. And I'm like, okay. Well, let me look up what Theo is. I'm like, I don't think that's an archangel, because I know some of the archangel names, like Raphael and Gabriel and all them. I'm like, I've never heard of Theo, so let me look it up. Well, then I end up finding that there is another channeler or intuitive who channels a angel group named Theo. Her name is, oh my god, I'm gonna draw a blank on her name. I think it's Sheila Gillette.
Come back to it.
Oh, I just saw a light orb. I think I'm right.
Should I look it up? Should I look it up to see if we could verify it? How do you spell it?
Yeah. I think it's Sheila. Sheila. And I think it's Gillette, like the razor.
Look for the orb. Gillet. E maybe.
Yeah.
What would I search? Like Sheila Gillette Theo group.
Theo group. Yeah.
Theo group. Theo group.
Theo group. I think. Theo.
Theo. The group. Would it be like a?
She has like a few episodes on Gaia too. If you guys watch Gaia, it's like the Netflix for spirituality. She has a few episodes on there where she's actually channeling them.
Sheila and Marcus Gillette. Oh, you got the light orb. Yeah. All right, +1 for light orbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Points. So yeah, it was her, and mind you, I had no knowing of this woman or the group Theo. Like, I had knowing of archangels, but never of a group named Theo. So again, I was like, okay, I'm overthinking it. Like, maybe I'm just getting too ahead of myself. Like, that doubt started to come in, you know? And I sort of just kind of brushed it off from then on. Like, I took note of it, and I even, like, I told a few of my friends and my partner and stuff, but I was just like, okay, you know, like, I'll just move on with my life kind of thing, and whatever, you know what I mean? But I think, again, like, that intuitive blockage is definitely coming from somewhere. So I like, started packing my bag for California. So this is now. I went to California from August 25th, 2021 to August 31st, 2021. And I was going to bring the book with me. It's on my shelf, but I was like, you know, I don't want to overpack things. Like, I'm just going to download it on audiobook because I have it on my phone, and I'll listen to it on the plane. Like, I'll download the book and all that. I didn't end up listening to it on the way there because we kind of had like a nighttime flight. So I wanted to sleep, so I wasn't like too jet lagged. And on the way back, it was actually going to be nighttime here on the East Coast. So I didn't want to sleep on the plane so that I wouldn't mess up my sleeping schedule. So I'm listening to it, and it's an interesting like layout of a book because it's more of a story that kind of just like makes you have a lot of epiphanies and realizations. It's not set up like any of the other spiritual books like Becoming Supernatural or Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself or any of those, or metaphysical books, I should say. But the main character meets this old man, and you know, he's like reluctant around this old man. Like, he doesn't even want to talk to him or anything. And then he ends up, you know, speaking to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm the king of Salem. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Like, popping up in my reality again. I was like, and here we go. Here they are. And I'm like, wow, like, maybe this is why that book was like falling off my shelf, and like, it just, everything sort of at that moment was just kind of like, holy crap, like, I feel like you're yelling at me at this point. Like, go to Salem, like, heal all this past life stuff, and maybe get a past life regression. Bought the plane ticket yet? Like, you know? Like... no. Well, because I told you, like, I'm kind of terrified. Rightfully like, so. And I have no problem with witches. I have no problem with witches. I think it's just what happened at that time. And my psychic did mention something about, like, I maybe possibly have been burned at the stake, you know, because I was also practicing. And I also actually used to have dreams as a kid when I was in a room with a lot of other women, like almost like in this circle sort of like group. So I don't know if there was like a ritual going on or like anything, but I didn't feel like it was out of bad intention.
The circle?
It was never out of bad intention. Yeah, like, I felt like I was there with, honestly, a lot of people that are in my reality now, like, people I'm close to, people I have great relationships with, and it didn't feel evil. I wasn't scared of that particular dream. Never of that one. It was more so the woman that lived behind me. That lived behind you. Yeah, so that was kind of the trippy experience, but when I was reading the book, and then, you know, the pages that sort of followed up from that gave me, like, big realizations, and just these, like, these messages of, like, you just need to listen. Like, there's no coincidences going on here. These are all purposeful messages for you. Whatever your divine purpose is, like, keep following that path. Do not give up. Because I'll be honest with you, like, I've been on social media and YouTube for a long time. There's been times where I really struggle with consistency and content. And, you know, I just have this perfectionist thing in me where I'm like, I can't put out a piece of content until, like, I'm the master at that, or I know everything about that subject, and just all these things, you know? And I am working through getting rid of all of that. Like, if I receive something, I just need to sit down, record a quick video, record a quick podcast, and just post it. Like, it doesn't have to be this, exactly. It doesn't have to be this huge, perfect production, Tiara. Like, it just can be its own thing, and just put it out for the people that need to hear it at that time. And I think it does, you know,
because I can relate to that. Like there was I made some like DJ mixes. So I'm gonna plug my SoundCloud. So go check out my SoundCloud if you're listening.
Yeah.
But there was one DJ mix I did, and maybe two. One of them was actually one of my buddies actually like writes music. His name's Don Kin is his artist name, and I made an entire mix of his songs, and it was like it was a mix of all of his songs. I like went through all of his songs. There's like 10 of them, and I like put them in a certain order of how I thought they sounded and felt good and like flowed and everything. Well, I left it up for maybe, you know, a couple weeks, but then like that perfectionist in me was like, but I don't like how like these transitions, when you're a DJ, you can hear all the minute things. You're like, I don't really like it. And I took it down. And then like a week later, I was at a music festival. I was talking to my brother's friend, and he was like, dude, like I really love like, you know, the way that you write all the descriptions in it, and you know, like this, and I love this. And even that one mix that you made with that kid who you were like, because I wrote in the description, I like just listening to one artist at a time sometime, get their vibe. And so I put that like in the description, and the kid was like, I really like that mix too. And I was like, oh shit, man, I took it down.
You took it down.
And he's like, oh, like, why'd you do that? I was like, well, I didn't really, like, I got in my head about, you know, whatever it is, whether it's like insecurity or, you know, whatever you have. I was like, you know, I ended up taking it down, and then I felt like shit after that. I ended up putting it back up. So it is up there. It is up there. It's more Don Kin, please.
Nice.
Yeah, and I even messaged him too. I was like, man, like, I don't know if you were looking for that mix, but like, you know, I was going through some shit. Like, it's up there now. Here's the link. And he's like, dude, I love that mix. Like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, shit, yeah, I know. I fucked up, but...
I mean, listen, I can totally relate. I do the same thing. Like, there's times I don't even sit down to film a video. I have so many concepts of videos written out and scripted and all of that. And I'm like, I need to stop doing that too. Like, nothing needs to be scripted. I can just sit there and consciously talk to the camera and just...
That's what this is.
Just do it.
I mean, that's
it really
what this
just comes
is,
down
right?
to that. Yeah.
I just have like an idea for how that's...
And I love that you're doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes it raw. It makes it more natural.
Like I was just going to say that. Like, I listened to your first episode and you talked a little bit about that. And I'm like, that's exactly the direction I'm going in. And then I'm like, oh, look how it manifested. I'm already on a podcast with,
here we are.
You know, having an amazing conversation.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. This is, it's going well. But yeah, let's keep it going. But shit, where do we go? See, you can't like, I'm patting myself on the back.
Where do we go from witches?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Have you had any of those experiences yet? Like, where you kind of felt like, maybe this is from something I'm not aware of or haven't healed from yet?
Yeah, this is actually maybe something we could talk about is like signs, symbols, numbers. Because this is something that I am.
Synchronicities.
Yeah, well, synchronicities are just, that's real. I've had way too many synchronicities to even start. And so where I'm at though is, excuse me, is like, you know, numbers and symbols. Like if I had to say where I'm at in my journey, there's like, I believe that there's something with numbers and symbols, but I'm not like sure what to do with them per se. Like, I know, so in Pittsburgh, the number 412 is our area code. So I have like a huge like affinity to it. And so I just kept seeing, whenever I was kind of on this like centered path, probably over the last year or so, I would keep seeing the number 412 pop up, you know, just all these things. And so I started, and even just in weird places, like I would be like driving and I never look at house numbers, but the one house number I would look at would be 412 or there'd be a sticker and it's in like this like weird braille and it says 412 in the middle of San Diego. I'm like, what, like who the fuck is like, you know what I mean? And so
it was in my head right now.
And someone followed me around with these stickers, like, you know, and there was no advertising on them either. It was just like this weird, like geometric 412. And I'm just like, look, man, like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, you know, so I'm at that point where it's like,
what does this even mean?
You know, so I'm at a weird, and maybe this is something you're able to explain a little bit more. So like, I'm at a weird spot where I'm like, you know, is there like a symbol that I picked that like puts me on the right path? And I'm like, okay, if I see this symbol, that means this. do I have certain symbols I set for like,
yeah.
if I see a microphone around or something, then it's like I should be podcasting, or, you know, are certain numbers mean so, you know what I mean?
One.
So I guess that's kind of where I'm at in that whole space of symbols and numbers.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like there's two different ways they kind of come about. They come about like intentionally.
Okay.
So something I used to do a lot in my readings when I do birth chart readings. Also, I've done a lot of tarot, just straight intuitive readings, but I still mix tarot into my birth chart readings and oracle cards. And I have this deck of, it's just animals, like animal spirit totems and stuff. And I give that to people. I pull one so that I'm like, if you see a crow or if you see a frog in your dreams or in your everyday present reality, just know you're on the right path. Like, that's a synchronicity to exactly what we're talking about. You're doing the work. You're, you know, this, that, and the third. And I do it for myself a lot too. Like, I will say, you know, I'm going to pull this card. If I see a panther in my dreams in regards to this situation, then I know this is a yes or this is a no. And it happens. Like, I kid you not, like, I'll have a dream and boom, a panther's in there. Actually, it happened a few times in 1 week. Panther, I was scrolling on my feed. I saw somebody had like a panther tattoo on their arm that I've never seen before in my life. It was just somebody that popped up on my feed and I'm like, oh, there it is again. So I do that. You know, you can do it intentionally and ask for specific things so that you know for sure, like, this is not a coincidence. Like, I literally asked for this, you know? So you could do that, but then it also kind of comes about like with the numbers, like how you're seeing and saying. Sorry, I get excited and I can't freaking talk. I
love the energy.
I always do that. So you know, like where something calls your attention to just like look to the right, and then boom, you see 412, or you know, just you know, stuff like that happens to me all the time. License plates, receipts, anything you can think of. I would say lately I've been seeing, when I was in California, I saw a lot of 777s. Here home, I see a lot of 444s and 999s.
What is that? What is that supposed to mean?
So this is, so like, I guess we can kind of touch on that because you were like, what do these even mean, right? So when you receive angel numbers, I've heard it explained to me a few different ways.
Quick. Angel numbers are just, three repeating of the same number?
They can be that, or they can be the numbers that are significant to you personally. So 412 to you is technically an angel number, because what I have discovered is that our spirit teams or our higher source or the universe, whatever you want to refer to it as, they speak to us in either metaphoric ways or in sort of vibrational frequency ways. And because each number has a certain value or vibrational frequency, they kind of use that as a tool, like a communication tool a lot of the times, because they think like, oh, this makes sense to us in our language and to them in the same way. Because energy doesn't really have a language, if you think about it.
It just is.
If we're speaking to someone that's in a, it just is. So if we're speaking to someone on a higher vibrational frequency or a higher dimension, let's just say, they don't really speak English, you know what I mean? So they can't just come down and be like, hey, Clayton, like, this is what you need to do.
You don't get that. Yeah.
You know, so, you're going to either, like, receive it in your dreams as, like, a metaphor or, like, an animal that means something to you, or maybe you're driving in your car and you turn to the left or right and you see a specific number value that means something to you, too, or, you know, 412 means something to you. So anytime you see the numbers, I've heard it explained to me a few different ways. Either you could look at it from the sort of astrological perspective of every number being correlated to like a different planetary energy. So one being connected with the energy of the sun and your identity and individuality. Two being emotions, the moon. Your feelings, your interconnectedness, your balance, because 2 is like kind of the scales or duality.
Sure.
3 being Jupiter, and then so on and so forth. You guys can look it up. I don't want to waste anybody's time here, but you know, you can look it up. There's each number is correlated to a planet and an energy. So if I see 333, then I know like, okay, Jupiter, like higher knowledge, connectedness to a higher source. 333 added up is 9. I know 9 is an ending of a cycle. Like, you can kind of interpret it that way. Or it kind of can just be like whatever you're thinking at the time. So I have a friend actually that lives in California. He's an artist, and anytime he sees one of those numbers, he kind of returns back to himself and is like, okay, what was I just thinking at that moment when I saw that number? That's that sign for me. And then another way is whatever that number means to you personally. So 412, for example, if you correlate that with like home or family, that could, mean like return home, return back to yourself, the
one,
something
that's so
like
funny
that.
you say that. The one, whenever I was talking about the house, when I was like, I never look for house numbers and I saw it. It was whenever I was helping my brother move into his place at Hermosa Beach. I saw the 412.
Oh my gosh.
It was like passing by, and you were talking about craziness with numbers. My apartment or my house number in San Diego, I had no idea that it was this number, but it ended up being my dad's birthday. Like he came, he came and he was like, he like looked at my like street address. He was like, "Huh?" He's like, "That's my birthday." I was like, "No, it's not." He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Holy shit, it is!" Like, so
yeah, that's funny how that works out. I also see patterns. Like if you ever look at the house numbers of all the houses you ever lived in your life, they are either all very similar or the same, or they have different energies every time you lived in those houses. You ever notice that?
No, I've never paid attention
like with numerology,
to it. I've never paid attention to it.
Yeah, so with numerology, they say the house number that you're in, or whatever the numbers add up to, has that effect or has that energy on your house.
Interesting.
So I live in a 4 house right now.
I'm in a 4 house right now.
So 4 is a lot about...
22.
Really? Oh my God,
22.
okay. So 22? Yeah. I lived in a 22 house too before this one.
Okay.
And it was still a 4 house.
All right, so what does a 4 house mean? Break my mind more.
Well, it's great because 22 is actually a master number, was what they call it in numerology and with angel numbers and stuff. So it has the double energy of the 2, being of the moon and of balance and harmony and peace and emotions and feelings. So you probably maybe feel a lot of that in your house. Like there's a lot of that energy. But being added up to the number 4, it's a lot about building stability. Because you're at almost the halfway point between 1 and 9, right?
Sure.
So you're building stability, you're getting there. It's like the halfway point. It's also connected to the planetary, well, I'm going to say quote unquote planetary energy because the North Node in astrology, Rahu, it's not a planet. It's a point at which it's calculated from the nodes of the moon. So, because the moon has like this magnetic pull on the earth, it's this whole science, but,
sure.
Rahu is like a lot about, it's considered the dragon's head. So there's a lot of intense energy there. It's about like devouring, and sometimes it can manifest as like this insatiability. Like you have to keep going for whatever you're striving for. Cause it's like, you're never fully satisfied. But that's like the shadow side to that energy. Okay. The light side is like the peace and the balance and the harmony of it.
So there's a little bit of a mixture of both, of like continuously striving, but being
everything
balanced.
has duality.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, for sure. But
interesting.
If you notice that, they also say, I've heard that people in 4 houses can kind of get a little lazy, which I have seen before, which is interesting.
Okay.
But I guess that's because of...
maybe you get burnt out?
I think it's mostly burnout. I think that's what it is. Like once you get burned out and then you kind of just get set in and, you don't really feel like doing anything for a while because you've been so like insatiably like going towards what you want, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm tired. You know what I mean?
You need that period of relaxing, and it's been like such a... Yeah. And that's something that I've actually realized in my life with where like, the last year I've been just tearing apart, maybe wouldn't even really call it spirituality the entire time, but just like interpersonal work. And it's just like, I would hit these points where I like wouldn't read for like a month or so. And I'm like, fuck, like I really want to read. But it's like, you need that time to kind of sit, reflect, like absorb everything that's kind of just come into you.
Let it integrate.
Yeah, to act out. Something that I wanted to kind of get to here that I'm thinking about, right, is how does... So there's all these different things. There's astrology, that, you know, your moon sign can tell you something, your Jupiter sign, your, you know, your rising sign, your sun sign. You have this numbers on your house, like they tell you something. It's like, to me, I feel like, you know, how much of it is it, and this is kind of my like counter person coming in to try to, you know, speak for the people that are screaming like you guys are insane. Is you have all these things that point to who you are, what you're doing. At some level, do those start to conflict with each other? Like, you know, if my house sign is this, but my sun sign is that, or I'm looking for a sign to do this, but in reality I'm doing that. Is it maybe that I'm disconnected from the universe if that's occurring? Or I guess, you know, how do you sit back and you're like, well, all these things are happening. You know, you have the Chinese calendar, which, you know, you can say, you could argue, it's like, well, maybe you're just looking into it. Like when I read the thing for the, you know, my sun sign, when I read it for Aries, it's like, well, you know, I identify with 90% of them and the other 10% aren't me kind of thing. Or it's like, you know, this sign counteracts this sign. Like I've never sat down and fully analyzed it, but I feel like at some level they have to kind of, you know, be butting heads and not be congruent.
They do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do. So if you get really into astrology, and that honestly, if you do, you can go to an astrologer and it's great, but I really, really encourage people to dive in deeper into their own chart and try to understand it, because it can be used as an amazing tool for self-discovery and self-development. Once you understand the basics of the house meanings, the planetary meanings, and the sign meanings, you can dissect like your entire existence just within that little map. You know what I mean?
Right.
But as far as all of it being connected, I definitely see parallels a lot of the time, which is interesting. Sure. Or just kind of repeating patterns. Like I said, like I've lived in either 2 or 4 houses like my entire life. So you kind of see that pattern playing out. But if you see something that's like not conflicting with one another, it's honestly, you can a lot of times find it in your birth chart. It's very interesting because even in your birth chart, there's what's called aspects. And aspects are the planets' relationships to each other. So if you have your Mars conflicting with your Mercury, then the way you take action is probably conflicting with how you communicate with people or how you think. You know what I mean? Or that's maybe just a challenge for you, constantly reoccurring in your life. So you'll kind of get to know a lot more about that once you dive deeper into like astrology and stuff like that, which can honestly take a long time. Like I've been an astrologer for, oh my God, I don't even really know how long, because I kind of just started diving into it and studying it just for fun. And then I have a good friend of mine, like her and I would analyze people's charts that we knew. We would analyze each other. We would read for each other all the time. Then we started reading for people, and you know, it's amazing how it really, you can almost see everything in somebody's chart. It's a map of your entire existence, for real.
So that's crazy. That's crazy to think about. So
it is.
This now leads us back to the conversation of, do you have free will versus is everything planned out though?
Yep.
So now, that might be like, in my opinion, where I get to is like the most metaphysical question of all, right? Like maybe, and so here's where I'm at with it, is that you have free will to do whatever you want, but the world isn't going to flow and feel natural if you're going against the universe or your internal guide.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's honestly how I'm understanding it right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's a reoccurring question that pops up for me, and I love asking people's perspective of it, because even everybody kind of understands it in a different way and in a different perspective, which I love. And I'm very like, I live my life kind of very philosophically. Like if I can learn something from someone, I've enjoyed the conversation. Like this one, I mean, it was just, you know, it took so many avenues that I'm just like, I love this. So in a sense, I guess, how would I put this? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. There's so many different ways that you can really dissect it.
We're talking about free will versus, you know, how you have to follow the universe, right? Like, to kind of get you back on track, it's just like, you know, you have your birth chart, which, arguably you can map out everything. I even saw you were talking about using like your moon and birth chart to manifest, which
Yeah, I'm like trying to think about it, how to like, I've been told so many things that I'm like, what do I want to subscribe to right now? Because I don't want to ever like.
Maybe you don't know.
Oh, I don't. I for sure don't. No, I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
Point blank. Period. But
well, what feels the most right to you?
I'll put it this way. Yeah, I'll put it this way. The way I understand it right now, currently, because I'm sure it's going to change. Your ascendant or your first house, your ascendant sign, how I understand it, is mostly how you identify with yourself, of course, but how you behave. It's like the way you take action. I mean, that could be considered other things in the chart too, but that's the moment that you chose to incarnate. Your rising sign is literally based off of the time. So it'll map out the entire rest of your chart. If you're in Aries rising, for example, every other house in your chart is going to be based on being an Aries rising. If you're a Cancer rising, same thing. It's every other house and area of your life in your chart is going to be based on you being a Cancer rising. So the fact that you chose to reincarnate as that particular rising sign says so much about your personality and how you behave.
Okay. As in more important than your sun sign,
and then of course,
right?
Absolutely. Okay. That's a very like. I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want to get too off track. But
there is no track, so don't worry.
I know in the West. Okay. I'm like, this topic for me, like always kind of like, how do I want to, explain this? But so the Western viewpoint of it is that your sun sign's like major,
right.
Like it's the end all be all. This is like it,
sure.
That
was how I got introduced to it.
Like yeah, and everybody does, which is totally fine. But like I said, you chose to reincarnate as your ascendant sign because that was the astrological sign that was rising from the east to the west.
Okay.
If you chose to be born 2 hours after that time, you'd have a totally different personality.
Really?
Like, that's just it. And everything, like, your personality makes up your personal reality, like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about in Becoming Supernatural. So if you didn't have that particular personality, you'd have a completely different destiny.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of what I was trying to say. I'm glad I actually just said that because
you got there.
I was like, how do I like break this down in a way that like the people playing devil's advocate are like, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, your personality is definitely based a lot on your ascendant sign, but definitely also off of your moon sign. So if I'm looking at somebody's chart, or if you're looking at your own birth chart, if I were to rank which ones have the most effect on, I want to kind of toggle between personality and life for a second. The ones that have the most effect on your personality, I feel, are your moon first, then your ascendant, and then your sun.
Okay, so it's number 3.
That's kind of how I would rank them, personally.
Sure.
Yeah. If we're talking about life and how your destiny kind of plays out, I'm going to say ascendant, then moon, then sun.
Okay.
So they're kind of interchangeable, but ascendant sign and moon sign are very important.
And life as in like what you're going to create, what you're going to do, if you're going to lead people, if you're going to be a follower, or are you...
Yeah. So I'll just use this as a quick example.
Sure.
And of course, things like the thing with astrology is so much can change based off the placements and planets. But do you know your rising sign?
I have that CoStar app. I could look it up real quick.
Okay. I'll use mine just really quick as an example, and then we'll use yours. Sure. So I actually practice the Vedic sidereal system of astrology only because I found tremendous accuracy with it. And there's just a lot of things that resonate. And I use a timing system called Mahadashas, which are based off of Vedic teachings. And you can definitely see as soon as your life takes a huge shift like never before, you've most likely are in a new planetary time period, which is a completely different topic. But so in Vedic and sidereal astrology, I'm a Cancer rising.
Okay.
So, based off of your rising sign, that determines all of your different houses and what astrological signs rule those houses. So for me, my 10th house is then ruled by the sign of Aries. So your 10th house has a lot to do with your job, your purpose, your career. So being ruled by a Mars sign and being ruled by Aries, being very like individual and about your sense of self and taking action, I have very entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just what it is. If I was born as a Leo rising, then my 10th house would be Taurus.
Okay.
So that would manifest completely differently being ruled by Venus.
Well, I think that might. Well, that is so. That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
So, and here, and this might be a good like testament to what you're saying with everything, because the majority of the people who are listening to this podcast at this point probably already know me. So let's start there. My ascendant sign is Leo, and my moon sign is Libra.
Oh, okay. So Leo, so Taurus is ruling your 10th house. So being ruled by Venus, of course you would want to look where Venus is in your chart. But Taurus is very, it's about your material possessions. It's very practical because it's an earth sign and it's fixed.
Okay.
So chances are you liked stability, probably some sense of stability when it comes to your job. And that can change. So, like if you're, like I said, I use the sidereal system. So that system's actually going to bring your entire chart back 23 or 24 and a half degrees.
Okay.
So you might be a Cancer rising as well, because I'm a Leo rising as well in tropical astrology,
Okay.
which is probably what you're using if you're looking in CoStar. Actually,
so.
I think they use a different house system, but
Well, it says Venus is in my ninth house, so I'm not sure.
Ninth house?
Yeah.
Okay, so ninth house is actually like higher knowledge. It's very spiritual house, actually.
Hence.
Higher teachings, travel as well.
No.
So I don't know if, well, you said you're moving to
Moving
Brazil, right?
Yeah.
There you
There's
go.
the connection.
Yeah, there's a connection. 12th house is actually a lot of foreign travel too. So you'll see a lot of the patterns play out in your birth chart. Like the more you understand it, the more it sort of comes to life. And also Taurus is a lot of financial, like monetary stuff. So a lot of times I feel like depending on the Venus sign, people that do have a Taurus ruled 10th house tend to have had like a pretty stable income or stable job for the majority of their life. And then depending on what planetary period they're in, where their Venus is placed, like, and also what transits are going on currently, they might take a complete shift in what they're doing in life. And, but it really like depends on that.
Right. And so I want to speak for the people who might not be fully buying in yet. How, in your belief, how much of this is, well, you told me, and so now I just see it everywhere, so therefore it is, versus, well, it just is, like, and I hear that, and this can kind of tie into a manifestation topic where, people agree roughly, like if you think red car, you see a red car, and so, it's kind of hard for me to have this conversation because I'm kind of on the other side of it almost, but, to speak for the people that are still trying to figure it out, right? Like how much of it is, well, this app on my phone just said, hey, you travel and you are traveling. So, it's, a coincidence. You probably saw it before or something. And so you're just are. Like, how do you, and maybe two questions. One, what would you kind of say to that? And two, how do you disprove that?
It's really hard because people do think it's a pseudoscience. And I guess astrology, in a sense, it probably hasn't had enough studies to be proven, you know. I really highly suggest, if somebody really wants to debunk it, follow your own birth chart and the patterns of your life and what has happened already, and follow it for a little bit longer and see if you see anything. Like, but you really have to understand it. So that's the hard part about it. I would say see a qualified astrologer if you really want to debunk it. But as far as everything else,
here's an idea. What do you think about this? What if you see what it's saying, right? And you try to act as if the complete opposite is true. Like completely go against the grain and see if you're
using your free will.
Well, yeah, use your free will, do the exact opposite. and see if it creates this discontinuity in your life and it makes life more or less difficult.
It could, or it could have. What I feel like I've been analyzing lately,
Sure,
is it could be of the fact that at that moment it was meant for you to sort of, because you already have this makeup of being a debunker or a, what's the other word for it, like when you're trying to
conspiracy theorists,
prove something wrong, skeptic.
Like skeptic,
yeah,
sure.
like if you're already like, if it's already part of your personal makeup and your personality to be a skeptic, then it was probably already mapped out and destined and fated for you to take those steps with your own free will.
Right.
So what I've been observing like lately is that fate and free will are almost one and the same. It's a very complicated way of looking at it.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a second.
Yeah.
But that's
no, seriously. Like I've been kind of pondering it lately. I think one of the best practices too, I probably should add this in there because I totally understand how people can look at this and be like, all right, it's complete bullshit. Like whatever.
It's easy
you have
to do
to become
that too.
Absolutely, yeah. But Dr. Joe Dispenza also talks about this in the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. You have to move from being subjective or being the subject of your reality to being objective and more observant. And really, take yourself almost out of it and be like, okay, why is this happening? Why am I choosing this right now? Like, you almost have to question everything.
Right.
And it's because, because I have this sort of personality, and maybe that was because I was raised by these type of parents, and this, that, and the third. Well, guess what? I can look at your birth chart and tell you exactly how your parents were.
Right. Yeah.
Based off of your moon sign and your sun sign, or your 4th house and your 9th house. So everything's literally in your birth chart.
That's crazy.
So I always kind of describe the planets as the people or the things that are triggered in your chart.
Okay.
Like I've kind of been taught that they are like the who's and the what's of your life.
Okay.
And then the houses are like where this is happening. What area of life is this happening in?
Okay, that's interesting.
It's very complicated stuff.
Oh yeah,
but...
I mean, you're going over my head, and and it's such a rabbit hole too, right? I remember in that.
It very much is.
And I remember watching that video you were talking about, and this is going to sound crazy, but that manifesting with the moon video you did.
Yeah.
It's like I got to a certain point where I stopped being able to understand, but right before that point. You said something like, well, we could get into like the degrees and like, what you should be truly doing here and here and here. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like, this is too much for me. There's so many layers to it. It just keeps
that's why I had to
unfolding.
take a moment. I'm like, all right, studying it for so long, you have such this deep understanding, and some things just kind of come to me like, oh yeah, like Venus to this and Taurus that and blah, blah, blah. And I have to bring myself back down to when I was first learning about this to really be able to deliver it in a way where it's consumable. And then when you're layering a subject like fate versus free will right on top of that, I know it can be so it just can be hard to consume that sort of idea. It becomes a lot for sure.
Well,
but that's why a spiritual journey in itself is really diving into your inner world, diving into who you are. And that's why I think your birth chart and using the absolute moment that you were born, that you chose to take your first breath and reincarnate on this earth, it's like a map.
Right.
It is a literal map for you.
And I think what you're touching on, but I think it should be more, and here's a great way I think for people to take this, what we've been talking about here, is to literally just analyze your life as objectively as you're saying as you possibly can, and try to orientate, see what's going on, what patterns are continuously happen. Is it something I need to figure out that's traumatic in my life that is inflicting on this? It takes a level of awareness. I believe meditation. It takes a level of just
meditation.
Meditation's huge. 100% meditate. If you don't meditate 5 minutes a day. It'll change your life.
At least.
Small baby steps, right?
Yeah, baby
baby
steps. If you're already like, I know for some people they're like, I cannot just sit there and not do anything and not think about anything. Like, how can I do that? And
just
trust
do
me,
it.
I understand. I know, but you just have to do
Well,
it.
I got to a point. This is going to sound crazy, and not to intimidate people who have never meditated, but I'll do like very long meditations now, where I'll go for like an hour, and I swear it's so bizarre. I like love doing it now. Like I absolutely find so much just peace and just enjoyment
Bliss.
from just doing nothing for an hour. It's so I we could go down that rabbit hole, but I want to you keep bringing up reincarnation. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. So, you keep bringing up like when you chose to reincarnate, or you were saying like you said a couple other things, but that was a big one that was sticking out. When you chose to reincarnate. Now, in my experience, where I am at with this whole conversation is, I believe there's something after this physical reality, period. I've had too many experiences in my own life, whether psychedelically induced or sober induced, that they're just, or just hearing stories about people who have died and come back. Like, too much things have pointed in my direction that, there's something after this, right?
Yeah.
And so where I'm at, and I've had this reincarnation conversation with somebody before, is like, well, what's the in-between stage? What's that like, it's not like I have a hard time believing, right? If I die, it's not like I'm just going to instantly appear in a cricket that's in the middle of being born, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's that in-between stage where I'm kind of caught up on. Like, I do believe at some level, like, we are, we've done this before, we're doing it again, all of this shit's happening now. But like, there's this maybe being reincarnated in the physical world, which then leads credence to, and maybe I'm going a little too far here, but I want to get this all out there, where, okay, how many quote unquote spirits are there, right? Because if we're talking about spirits inhabit every single living thing, which that's what I believe, I guess I'm projecting what I believe. So that means that there has to be at least one in every tree. There has to be at least one in every insect, which there are trillions of in this world. There has to be one in every human for sure. So, not to mention extraterrestrials, which we...
Oof, whole other topic.
Oh, that
we can get there too.
We can. Yeah, maybe that's a lot for this conversation. But point being is like, are there infinite spirits in reality? So I'm still in that, like, what's the in-between stage in your mind, your opinion, or what you've experienced?
In my belief.
Like, how many are there, question. Or like, what's that in-between stage?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. To be honest, the only way I can sort of reference this back to something, because we always kind of have to do that as humans to understand a concept,
right,
is I kind of think back to Nikola Tesla's philosophy of everything is just energy vibrating at a different frequency,
right,
and energy cannot be created nor destroyed, just transformed or transferred. So you're right, there might be a spirit in the tree. I for sure believe that there is a spirit in the frog and in the flowers, and that's especially how I know ancient civilizations understood it to be,
right,
especially and I think it just sort of takes form in different ways. I don't think that there's a cap to how much energy is out there, or how it's physically being manifested, or anything, or what dimensional plane it's being manifested on, because that's like a whole nother thing. There's multi-dimensional planes.
We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about next time I bring you on.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole too. But I mean, I don't have an answer for it, to be honest. I just think that
that's fair.
I kind of refer it back to consciousness trying to experience itself, to grow, to expand, to reach a higher vibration. And we do that through kind of splitting up that energy, like, let's just say, into me, into you, into other people, into other objects, things, thought forms, everything you could probably possibly think of.
There's
that's just how I view it, honestly.
And I think there's probably a lot of truth to that, because this really resonated in me, and I thought about this whenever you were talking, was there was like a little picture or a little what would be like a little cartoon, and it's there's all these birds, and two of them are sitting on like a telephone wire, and and the little bird is saying like, "Dad, what's going on?" Or maybe he's not even asking, but the dad's sitting there talking to the little bird, and he's like, "You are the universe acting as a bird." And it's like, and it really resonated with me. It's like, holy shit, like, it's like you are whatever this is acting as this. It's like, you are Tiara, you are the universe acting as Tiara. Like, this laptop is this fuck, maybe it's even in inanimate objects too. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I mean, they have everything has an energy signature,
right.
I guess you could say.
Everything's vibrating, right? At a fundamental level, we're all atoms. Let's go to a scientific place. We all are atoms, and atoms are vibrating. So, like, if we're viewing everything from an anatomic level, it should all look exactly the same. But the fact of the matter is it doesn't. That's a laptop monitor. That's a laptop. That's a light. This is a camera. Like, it's at a fundamental level, it's all just atoms. But, through our perception, the way we evolve, the incredible nuances of the third dimension, let's say, just to let alone, we can only perceive it, with a naked eye in such a way. And I think science is like, and here's where it gets difficult, right? Is I feel like people try to use science to disprove spirituality, or even just these spiritual ideas. But I feel like science is just trying to find a physical way to explain them. It's like, it's not that they're competing in my mind. I feel like it's just science is trying to catch up to this like innate intuition we have within ourselves. And here's what I got to is I was like, I was talking with my roommate at the time in San Diego, and we were talking about like these microchips that they wanted to put in people, and they were doing it like in some companies. And I was like, I'm big into health and fitness. And I was like, I'm never gonna, put a chip in me. And I was like, well, actually the only way I would put a chip in me is if it was like a little LED screen that was just right on my arm, and it said, you need this much protein, or you need this much carbs, or you need this much that.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Well, and so what happened is I was like, like that would be the reason I'd get technology put into my body. I came across this book called Intuitive Eating, which is the core. It's incredible. It goes through like all these things, like why do you eat? Like what is your reason for eating? Like, and are you eating because you feel emotional? Or like with me, I was considered like a professional dieter, where I've tried every single diet. I've tried every single diet, like which one does what, where is this? And what the core concept of the book is get yourself aligned, and then just trust your intuition, or feel what your body needs. Like, am I thirsty right now, or am I actually hungry? Am I hungry, or am I just bored? Am I actually just feeling emotionally in pain, and I want to just suffocate that with food? And so it kind of broke me there. I think that was when I hit my point of like, holy shit, I think we're just using science to try to replace the natural intuition that's given to us from the universe.
Absolutely. Like your natural inner compass, for real.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of it is, we're so disconnected from our own bodies, like, which is wild to me. Like the type of society we're living in now, like it's so outside of ourselves. It's so external, and it's so like stimulating from an external perspective, I guess you could say. And really, like, we're so disconnected from our own bodies that we don't even know what's going on. Like you said, I don't know if I'm hungry or if I'm actually dehydrated because I haven't drinking water in 12 hours or however long. Right. And I really think it's like we need to start listening to our bodies again. We need to start listening to ourselves and reconnecting with ourselves to, like, know, oh, man, I'm feeling this way. I probably need to eat, like, some greens, or I need to, get some vitamin D. I need to go outside and get some sunlight.
And that's what you're starting to touch on is what actually, let's go full circle. What started me off with the whole chakra system, and what really, like, I was like, okay, I like acted as if it was true kind of thing. And I started seeing some profound stuff. Like, when I would meditate, I'd be like, well, where's the pain coming from in my body? And, I'd like associate it like, oh, it's coming like at like my hips, or, oh, it's actually coming closer to my chest, or, my neck. Well, I kind of always acted as if the chakra whole thing was right. What really blew me away was whenever I started integrating fruits into this. Whenever I started saying to myself, okay, I'm feeling like, digestion issues, or which would be your root chakra, which is represented by red. So I'd eat strawberries or red apples, and it would clear it up. If I felt like, kind of like in what would be your sacral chakra, or your, sacral chakra, represented by the color yellow for intuition, and
or solar plexus,
solar plexus, yes, not sacral, solar plexus, which is I would feel it anytime I ate too much sugar. I would feel it like acting up.
Oh yeah.
Well, what do I do? I eat a banana, and which is yellow, and it would like clear it up. And then I go online and I'm like, okay, if I have heartburn, which is what it felt like, what do I eat for it? And what do you know? Banana's listed because of its like alkaline properties, because of, it went into the whole science behind it. And I'm like, I could just trust these colors. And the last one that absolutely blew me away, the physical like thing, my neck, I used to have like pretty bad acne, and I'm sure the lighting's good, so it's helping me out here. But my neck, your throat chakra, represented by the color blue, I was like, wonder what I should eat. I was like, let's start eating blueberries and let's see what happens. And I was putting down handfuls of blueberries, which I don't recommend anyone does, but if it's imbalanced, maybe you need to. Within 2 days, my neck was clearing up, acne was reducing. I was like, okay. I remember going into my chiropractor. I was like, dude, you gotta hear this. Like,
got some blueberries, man.
I was like, he was the guy I like went to about all this stuff. I was like, dude, you're not gonna believe this. And he's just like, yeah, I believe it. Like, yeah, that's how it works.
He's probably seen it before, honestly.
Yeah.
Honest to God, like it's crazy to me how these physicians and medical professionals, like, I feel like they're either on either end of the spectrum, like they're completely like blown away and shocked that somebody actually healed their body through food, and sometimes even just through meditation, like Dr. Joe Dispenza's teachings. But the other spectrum of it is, oh yeah, like I've had a few patients come in here before and they cleaned up their diet, they did this, that, and the third, and they were as good as new. And it's like our food is really our medicine.
It's so incredible. Like, and then and now we can get into like the whole healthcare system and how broken that is. And I think it's such a shame how, they treat, they don't cure kind of thing.
They just slap a Band-Aid on top and they're like, okay, you're good to go.
Well, you can't treat a cure if everyone's healthy and they figure this shit out. You can't treat it. You can't make money off of it. You're not making money
anymore.
Yeah. So maybe, well, let's be careful we don't get too deep into that, because I'm sure they're watching all this stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, they probably through my webcam. What's up?
Yeah. I just get a red thing. It's like, all right, well,
imagine everything just shuts down and we're like, oh, I gotta text Clayton.
Talk to your spirit team, protect us to make sure we can get this out there.
I've seen a few light orbs out there, so I mean, I think we're good. But...
Okay, cool. Yeah. It's always good to connect with.
It's reassuring.
Yeah. Well, talking about flow, and to finish this up, I'm starting to feel like I got to go to the bathroom. So, maybe I feel like we have so much more we could talk about. But maybe we just save that.
Timing right now.
Yeah. Maybe we just save that for like another time, because I don't want to fight this urge to go to the bathroom, because then it's going to ruin the rest of this podcast.
Absolutely. You know what? I'll just leave it with this. Maybe next time I'll share my journey of healing my body from hormonal birth control and how that's affected my physical and spiritual body.
And something I know nothing about, so I would, I'll do my best to, I guess, you'll have to be guiding me through the...
Like any other prescription drug can take effect on your body.
Right.
But I'll kind of maybe talk about the background of how it's affected my body and what I'm doing to heal it. So.
Okay. Sweet.
I haven't talked about that yet.
All right, cool. Well, nice. We'll save that as a little prequel for the next time I get you on, and cycle some more people in here, get some more ideas flowing, and
absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure we'll be in touch about the whole journey and everything along the way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, as a shameless plug, definitely everyone listening, thank you so much for making it through. I would love to reiterate, if anything we said like completely disgruntles you and you're like, this is fucking bullshit, these guys are insane. Number one, I say take a second, breathe, meditate on it. Like why does it irritate you, and where does it irritate you? Find in your body where that is. And then we can talk. We'll talk if you do that, but I'll know if you didn't meditate on it. Number
the
two,
resistance will be there.
Yeah. Oh, I'll see it. You'll send me a paragraph, that's about 10 lines long. Yeah, and I'll be like, "Go meditate, man." And we'll talk after you meditate
Send you
about
some
it.
love.
Yeah. I want to say Tiara has a dope YouTube channel. Not even just for spirituality. She does like makeup type stuff. I'll let you
Yeah.
plug whatever you want to plug for a little bit here.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it in the podcast, but I'll probably be making a little bit shorter form content because I have a lot of informative stuff on there right now
Right.
about spirituality and your energy bodies and your chakra system. And I do have a website where you can buy meditations and do your own self healing, which is amazing. I just encourage everybody to keep observing and keep doing their own shadow work and following along on the journey because I'm just here to help you out.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great segue because I think in my mind I see it as just, I'm having this conversation A for myself and then B for everyone listening. Like, these are types of conversations you can't really find people to have these types of conversations like any run of the mill day.
Very
So
far and few in between.
oh, it's so difficult. But yeah, so that's why I want to get these recorded, get it out there to people, let people actually like see them, experiment with them, text me about them. But again, follow Tiara on all of her stuff, follow me on all of my stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can find both of us just by our names, right? Like yours
mine's all linked. Yeah, and yours is all linked to your name too. Yeah,
Yeah,
mine's just at Clayton and all the socials.
Yeah, me too.
Except for
Tiara Alicea.
except for me, Facebook. Yeah, we'll find it.
Oh yeah, I'd never
But
get
all
on
right.
Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be dying. I'm not really sure, but
It might be.
I don't really. That'd be the one place. Don't find me there.
Yeah, don't me either. Please don't.
All right. Well, I mean that wraps up episode 2. Thank you so much, Tiara.
Thanks, Clayton.
I'm truly grateful you're here. That was a sweet
I'm
conversation.
grateful to be here. Yes.
I wish I could release it sooner than in like 2 weeks. Like, it won't be this Monday, but
that's
it'll be the
okay.
following Monday. Yeah.
That's
So we're
all right.
recording this for
Divine
everyone.
timing.
We're recording it. Yeah, September 4th is when we're recording it. But other than that, TR, thank you. I'm going to stop this, but if you could hold on for just a second. But thank you so much. Great conversation. Wish my bladder would help me out, but
It's
the universe
okay.
has its.
You're hydrated. You're probably drinking your water. Everything's all good.
Yeah, the universe has its own plans, right?
Yep, always.
But sweet. Without further ado, thank you everyone for listening, and let's grow together.
Bye, guys.